3 months before I retired, I signed one piece of paper. Took maybe 30 seconds. I had no idea I'd just put 40 years of work at risk. 40 years of getting up before sunrise. 40 years of overtime. 40 years of putting a little money away every month. That's what 30 seconds almost cost me. The strange part is, I didn't think I was taking a risk. I thought I was doing what any responsible man would do before retirement. Looking back now, I can point to the exact afternoon everything changed. At the time, it felt completely ordinary. My name's Frank. I'm 63. Most of my life, I worked as a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant in Ohio. Nothing fancy. If a conveyor quit moving, somebody called me. If a boiler went down in January, my phone rang before daylight. I liked that kind of work. Machines made sense. Something broke, you figured out why, you fixed it. People, not so much. Linda and I had been married 37 years. We weren't rich, never expected to be. Our house was paid off. Neither of us carried credit card debt. If we wanted something, we saved first, then we bought it. I used to joke our bank probably forgot we existed. That made Linda laugh every time. Retirement wasn't some dream of sitting on a beach. It was simpler than that. Coffee on the back porch without looking at my watch. Fishing on a Tuesday morning. Watching my grandson's baseball games without wondering if work was gonna call. That sounded like a pretty good life to me. About a year before I planned to retire, the house started filling with little reminders that the finish line was getting close. RV brochures showed up on the kitchen table. Linda would slide one across to me. "What do you think?" I'd flip through the pictures. Yellowstone, Glacier, the Blue Ridge Parkway. "I still want Yellowstone," I'd say. She'd smile. "I know." Some evenings I'd walk out into the garage. My old pickup didn't need washing. I'd wash it anyway, not because it was dirty, because I was already imagining mornings when I had nowhere else to be. Every few weeks, I'd log into my retirement account. I'd stare at the balance for a minute, close the laptop. I never looked at it and thought, that's a fortune. I thought, we made it. At work, HR handed me a retirement packet thick enough to stop a door. The guys in the shop noticed the date before I did. 90 days, one of them yelled across the floor. "You'll forget all about us." "Been trying for years," I told him. Everybody laughed. So did I. I really believed the hard part of life was over. Then David called. Hadn't talked to him in months. We'd worked together years earlier, before he left the plant. He'd gone into financial planning, not the flashy kind, at least not from what I could tell. Same pickup, same baseball cap, same dry sense of humor. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee. "Sure," I said. It felt more like catching up than doing business. We met at the same diner we used to hit after night shift. Nothing expensive, bad coffee, good pie. He asked about retirement. I told him I had about 3 months left. He smiled. "You earned it." When breakfast was over, he looked at me for a second. "You mind if I take a quick look at what you've got saved?" I didn't hesitate. Why would I? I'd known him more than 20 years. He flipped through the numbers, didn't say much, just nodded once or twice. Finally, he closed the folder. "You did better than most." I laughed. Didn't always feel like it. He tapped the folder with one finger. "Only thing that worries me," he paused, "is inflation." I frowned. "What about it?" "You spent 40 years building this." "Yeah." "You don't want it quietly losing value after you retire." Hadn't thought about that, not once. And that's exactly where the conversation started to change. He never talked about getting rich. That would have made me suspicious. Instead, He talked about keeping what I'd already earned. "You're not chasing bigger returns," he said. "You're protecting your retirement." That sounded like me. He explained there were investments that could bring in steady income, offer some tax advantages, and be less exposed to market swings. No charts full of crazy numbers, no promises, no pressure. Just conversation. Looking back, I keep trying to remember if there was a moment I should have walked away. I still can't find one. A week later, we met again, then one more time after that. Most of it was paperwork, initials here, signature there. Every page looked like every other page I'd signed over the years. Insurance, mortgage, benefits. Nothing about it felt dangerous. One night, Linda asked, "Everything going okay with that investment guy?" "Yeah." "You trust him?" I set my fork down. "I've known David 20 years. She looked at me another second, then nodded. "Okay." That was enough for both of us. Or so I thought. A couple weeks later, I needed to ask David a simple question. I called. Voicemail. Left a message. Didn't think much of it. People get busy. Next afternoon, I called again. Same thing. Sent an email. Nothing. By Friday, I was annoyed more than worried. Then the monthly statement showed up. Poured a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Linda was out grocery shopping. I opened the envelope. The numbers were there, but they didn't look right. Different account names, different balances. I flipped back to the first page, then the second. Maybe I'd mixed up the paperwork. Maybe this was somebody else's statement. Checked my name. It was mine. I read every page twice. Still couldn't make sense of it. For a few minutes, I convinced myself I was just reading it wrong. 3 days later, another envelope showed up. Certified mail. Had to sign for it. Still remember standing in the driveway with that envelope in my hand. The mail truck had already turned the corner. Everything was quiet. Just the wind moving through the trees. Inside were words I never expected to see. Government investigation. Assets frozen. Operations suspended. I read those 3 lines over and over. They still didn't seem real. I called David. Straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. Started calling every customer service number I could find. Most of them rang till they disconnected. One woman finally answered late that afternoon. She sounded worn out, like she'd been saying the same thing all day. "I'm sorry, sir. Can you tell me where my money is?" "I can't." "Can I still retire?" There was a pause. "I don't know." That was the first moment I realized I might not retire when I thought I would. Maybe not for a long time. I didn't go home right away. I drove. No plan, no destination, just road after road. Past the high school, past the old hardware store, past the lake where Linda and I used to take sandwiches on Sundays. Kept thinking if I stayed in the truck long enough, maybe I'd figure out how to explain this. Never did. Next morning, I parked outside the plant almost an hour early. Young guys walked past carrying coffee cups and lunch boxes, laughing. One of them complained about working overtime that weekend. I almost smiled. Remembered saying the exact same thing 30 years earlier. Back then, retirement felt so far away it didn't even seem real. Now, it was close enough to touch, and somehow farther away than ever. When I walked into my office, the retirement countdown calendar was still hanging beside my desk. 78 days. I stared at it a long time, then pulled it off the wall, folded it once, set it in the bottom drawer. Nobody asked where it went. Nobody even noticed. That evening, I called the RV company. The woman who answered sounded cheerful. "Ready to confirm your reservation?" I looked through the kitchen window. The brochures were still spread across the table where Linda had left them. "No." A pause. I need to cancel. I'm sorry to hear that. So am I. She asked if there was anything else she could do. There isn't. I hung up before she could hear my voice crack. Later, I opened the garage. My fishing rods were already leaning against the wall. Bought 2 new reels a month earlier. They were still in the boxes. I picked one up, turned the handle once, set it back exactly where it had been, then shut off the light and closed the garage door. Felt like I was putting retirement away with it. For almost a week, I didn't tell Linda. Every morning we drank coffee together. She talked about grocery prices, our grandson's next baseball game, a neighbor who'd finally replaced his roof. I nodded at the right places, pretended everything was normal. Then she'd leave room, and I'd pull another letter out of the drawer. Must have read those pages 20 times, like the words might change. They never did. Looking back, keeping it from her wasn't about protecting her. It was about protecting myself. As long as I didn't say it out loud, maybe it wasn't real. She found out anyway. I was sitting at the kitchen table after dinner. The letters were spread out in front of me. Didn't even hear her walk in. She set her coffee mug down, didn't ask what I was reading. She already knew something was wrong. "Frank?" I looked up. "What's going on?" For a second, I almost lied. "Nothing." The word barely left my mouth. Then I looked at the papers, pushed them across the table instead. She read quietly. No questions, no interruptions, just turned one page after another. When she finished, she folded her hands together. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator running. Finally, she looked at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" Not angry, not loud, just tired. I rubbed my face. "I thought I could fix it." She nodded once. "And if you couldn't?" I didn't answer, because there wasn't one. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "We've been married 37 years. I know. You don't have to carry bad news by yourself." That was the moment that stuck with me. Not the letters, not the money. That sentence. Because she was right. I'd spent my whole life believing my job was to shield my family from problems. Never stopped to think that shutting people out creates a different kind of problem. The investigation dragged on for months. Every few weeks, another envelope showed up, another update, another delay. Some mornings, I'd leave the letters unopened till after breakfast. I wasn't avoiding the truth anymore, just tired of reading the same disappointment in different words. Then, one afternoon, we finally got some good news. Part of the money would be recovered. Not all of it, not even close, but enough that we'd keep the house, enough that we wouldn't have to start over from nothing. Linda read the letter first. She let out a slow breath. "Well," I looked at her. "We're still standing." For the first time in months, it felt true. A few weeks later, I heard what happened to David. Not through the news, not through a lawyer. An old coworker mentioned he'd seen him at the grocery store. Said he looked rough. Didn't think much about it. Then someone else told me David had lost a big part of his own retirement. I didn't believe it. Figured people were just talking. Months later, I learned it was true. He hadn't moved to Florida, hadn't bought a beach house, wasn't hiding somewhere with everybody's money. He'd invested alongside the rest of us, trusted the same company, lost a lot. Maybe not exactly what I lost, but enough to change his life too. That didn't make everything okay. He was the professional. Should have asked harder questions. Should have been more careful. I still believe that. But something changed inside me. For months, I'd needed someone to blame. Made the whole thing easier to understand. One bad guy. One bad decision. Case closed. Life almost never works that way. Sometimes people don't ruin your future because they're dishonest. Sometimes they ruin it because they're wrong. Those aren't always the same thing. I stayed at the plant for 2 more years. Not because we couldn't survive. We could. Our plans just got smaller. I stayed because every payday reminded me I could still build something. Not another retirement account. Confidence. Slowly, paycheck by paycheck, life started feeling normal again. Eventually, retirement came anyway, just not the one we'd imagined. The RV brochures disappeared from the kitchen. Yellowstone stayed on the list. Maybe it'd stay there. Our mornings got quieter than I'd expected. Linda made coffee. I'd sit on the porch while the neighborhood slowly woke up. Instead of driving across the country, I'd drive 15 minutes to the lake. The fish didn't seem to care whether I'd traveled 2,000 miles or 2. Neighbors started knocking on the garage door. "Frank, you got a minute?" Usually it was a fence, a leaking faucet, a lawnmower that wouldn't start. I grabbed my toolbox. Funny thing was, I enjoyed that almost as much as I ever enjoyed work, maybe more. My grandson's baseball games became the one thing I never missed. Always there before the first pitch, always sitting in the same folding chair behind the fence. One Saturday after the game, we stopped by the lake. He skipped a rock, then another. Without looking at me, he said, "Grandpa?" "Yeah?" "Were you really gonna drive all over the country when you retired?" I smiled. That was the plan. He threw one more rock. "You mad it didn't happen?" I watched the circles spread across the water till they disappeared. Then I shook my head. I was. He looked at me. "Not anymore?" "No." "Why?" I picked up my fishing rod. Because I spent a long time thinking I lost my retirement. I looked around. The quiet water, my grandson standing beside me, the tackle box sitting in the grass. Then I smiled. Turns out, I just lost the version I'd imagined. He thought about that a second, then shrugged. "Want to see if they're biting?" "Yeah," I said. "I do." That evening, after we got home, I opened a kitchen drawer looking for a flashlight. The old RV brochure was still there, corners bent. A coffee stain covered one edge. I flipped through it one last time. Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Mount Rushmore, places we'd planned to see. I folded it closed, set it back in the drawer, then walked outside. My grandson was already waiting in the driveway with 2 fishing rods. He handed me one without saying a word. I took it. We climbed into my old pickup and headed toward the lake. We drove toward the lake. Neither of us said much. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about the money anymore.